This just dropped and I'm getting to it, guys. Seals Are Good has just released something new, and I'm already cringing inside because of it, because Obi-Wan Kenobi is about to justify child soldiers. Using the Force, I guess. I don't know. But that did raise a horrifying question, which has a horrifying answer. Yes, the Jedi employed child soldiers because the clones were made. The Republic was horrible, man. You don't even think about it until you really, really sit down and think about it, but the Republic was friggin' horrible. Seals Are Good. Thank you for ruining my childhood. Good on you. Oh god, I'm coughing. Let me take a drink here. We're gonna jump into this. Warpugs. Seals Are Good is one of the best comedy channels that I have seen related to Star Wars or pretty much any other franchise. Just, you deserve to go check her out, okay? Check her out, subscribe to her, get in there. Warpugs, let's get into it. All links are going to be in the description down below. I think I'm wearing an appropriate shirt from this. This came from the Fat Electrician, but let's get into it. Here we go. Time to lose faith in humanity.
I wanted to keep this a surprise for when the other reinforcements arrived, but I'm too excited.
Ooh.
I finally submitted Form 1568C to the Council.
Yay!
Want to have an extra set of shoulders installed?
What?
Is this about Master Duke?
He's not technically a master
Saying
anymore.
he was going to make a guy with 4 lightsabers, and you wanting to compete?
Anakin, don't be ridiculous. It's unbecoming, flying off into absurd flights of fancy like that.
I'm sorry, Master. It was silly of me to assume that
You're
such a
thinking
form
of
exi-
Form 1568B.
Dude, really?
Form 1568C will give me a new Padawan.
in the
Okay.
middle of a war.
Anakin, we both know how common these Star Wars are.
Before this there were 1,000 years of peace.
Children grow up in Star Wars all the time. You can hardly move for Star Wars.
In abstract, I understand that having a new Padawan could be a wonderful opportunity
True.
to discuss one's personal theses.
Yes.
But I'm not so sure about bringing a child to a war zone and having them fight.
You're all right with the clones, and if you think about it, they're kind of children.
They
We
are.
happily hurl them like logs into the fires of the galactic conflict.
They've had their development accelerated and are mentally and physically adults when they freely choose to be used by a government which views them purely as dispensable cogs in the machine of war after being indoctrinated in the necessity of it for their entire lives.
The Republic is horrifying, man. Why? Why is my childhood screeching in agony?
Have you been talking to Padme by any chance, Anakin?
Padawan could easily be an actual child. It's a fascinating dichotomy.
The average
Oh,
Padawan
God.
isn't a child, though. And what are the chances Master Yoda would send a child into the middle of a war zone?
High. Extremely high.
Guess it would depend on how many drugs he could get out of it.
Not everything Master Yoda does is for drugs. Well, he enjoys the company of Wookiees, too.
I don't like to think about that.
No. Oh, God. Why? Oh, God, I can't. Oh, I need a trip to the mind cleanser. Oh,
Judge me by my size, do you?
I
that quote wasn't necessary.
Padawan Master Yoda decides to send to fight in a war zone is a child, then it's the will of the Force and is thus, morally speaking, good.
Is it moral because it's the will of the Force? Or is it that because it's moral, it's the will of the Force?
Ah, the Ophithian dilemma from the Bith philosopher Plato. Your point is that if it's moral because it's the will of the Force, then the will of the Force could demand something horrific which we'd have to view as moral.
Like facilitating a genocide, doing nothing to stop slavery, or allowing the deeply unnatural ability of lightning fingies.
Whereas if it's
Yes.
the will of the Force because it's moral, then the Force is merely an observer of morality and thus not the final arbiter of it, suggesting that perhaps we'd be better off serving something else and moving on from the Jedi Order, or perhaps reforming it to serve that moral authority directly.
That idea can be quite tempting, especially given how often Master Yoda makes us use certain body parts for drug smuggling.
Yes, having all that ketamine jammed there was quite the experience. Certainly made
Oh man, I'm learning too much lore right now, and I'm not comfortable with any of it.
walking a challenge.
Sitting down wasn't much fun either.
Bizarre that he makes us put it in our ears.
Really threw off my equilibrium.
Either way, doubtless you're familiar with the Jedi philosopher Eiley Alston, who noted that as respects
What?
the notion of commands being moral because they're the will of the Force, that would imply that to say the Force is moral would in effect be equivalent to saying the Force obeys its own will. However, as he points out, this is evidently not what we mean when we say
Okay.
the Force, and by extension, its will is morally good.
With fascinating dialogue like this, I don't understand why Yoda called us boring nerds and told us we had to fight on the front lines only on planets where our communication devices don't work.
Nice.
And that we had to be as reckless as possible. Anyone would think he wants to kill us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Personally, I blame you. His argument continued, noting that a necessary condition following being A ought to do action B is that it implies at least the metaphysical possibility that being A does not do action B. This view would have moral obligations attached to all beings, including those so pure that doing the wrong thing didn't even occur to them.
Like an angel, such as Padme.
What?
An angel. I hear deep space pilots talk about them.
Shut up. Oh, shut up. Shut up.
The most beautiful creatures in the universe. They live on the moons of Iago, I think. But also not...
You're a funny boy, Anakin.
Do you mean that in a good way?
No moral obligations attached to the Force, assuming as we Jedi do that the Force is inherently perfectly good. Therefore, the will of the Force can be said to be constitutive of moral obligations for those beings who have them, without it being the case that the good nature of the Force consists of obeying its own will.
Okay.
Or indeed, that it consists of any relationship between the Force and its own will.
The second point?
Quite simply, we should think of the Force itself as the supreme standard of goodness.
Okay.
The will of the Force manifests according to the necessary goodness the Force embodies.
So the dichotomy of the two potential choices was no such thing. It was a false dichotomy. A non-dichotomous dichotomy.
What?
If you will.
I won't.
One could argue that arbitrariness is still present, given that it seems arbitrary to take the Force as the standard of goodness, while disregarding the nature of the Force's conformity to the principles of goodness.
Okay.
But, as the Jedi Eiley Alston himself said, there's necessarily a stopping point for any explanation, and we ultimately reach a general principle or individual paradigm. It's no more arbitrary to invoke the will of the Force than to invoke the necessity of writing and discussing one's personal theses as their moral
No,
foundation.
stop. Don't bring up the damn thesis. Leave the thesis out of this.
Ridiculous. And it's made half the council think I'm the worst Jedi Master since Ulo the Terrible, who was so utterly incompetent as a Jedi Master that he kept training his Padawans to hold the wrong end of the lightsaber. Through a series of highly unfortunate clerical errors, he became Battle Master and inadvertently dismembered an entire generation. He was only redeemed in the eyes of the galaxy when he was tricked into falling to the dark side and almost wiped the Sith out single-stumpedly.
So, you're not so keen on the theses moral foundation idea? Well, either way, the argument makes sense. Unless, of course, we're looking at the Force through entirely the wrong lens.
Ooh.
Or are otherwise unable to understand the true will of the Force.
Nope. We're great. We understand the will of the Force perfectly, and we must follow it exactly.
Yes.
And that means that if my new Padawan is a child, and by extension becomes a child soldier, it's the will of the Force,
Yes.
and thus is morally good.
You never even thought about it, did you? I never thought about it. I damn sure never thought about it. The Republic employed child soldiers, and so did the Jedi. I'm done. I'm finished. I have nothing left. I can do nothing else. I don't want to hear about anything else at this point. My childhood is destroyed, Warpugs. It's gone. It is gone, and it is dead. It is never coming back. And yes, the like button does have the high ground. Be sure to hit it. And check out Seals Are Good as well for more of this kind of stuff because, oh my god, she is amazing with this kind of stuff. Really. 100%. Guys, I cannot say enough about this series. The lore behind this series is amazing. I can't. I can't with this because between Anakin's thesis and the fact that Samuel L. Jackson as Mace Windu is the only straight guy in the entire place that understands how utterly insane everything is. Warpugs, I'm heading out from here. Hit the like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. All of Seals Are Good's links is going to be in the description down below. Check her out. Subscribe as a member of Patreon for early access. I'm leaving. I'm going to go cry in a corner. Bye, Warpugs.